The airport was already awake before the sun fully rose, and the halls echoed with rolling suitcases and tired footsteps. People moved fast, eyes fixed on screens and signs, chasing time as if it might escape them. Loud announcements floated above the crowd, mixing with quiet sighs and impatient voices. In the middle of this busy place stood a young woman named Sasha, calm and still, holding her bag close to her side. Sasha had learned long ago how to blend into spaces like this. She dressed simply, choosing comfort over style, hoping to move through the world unnoticed. Her face showed no fear, only quiet focus, as she checked the departure board once more. This trip mattered to her, not because of where she was going, but because she wanted a moment of normal life without attention or protection. She stepped toward the check-in area and waited her turn like everyone else. Families laughed nervously nearby, and a couple argued softly about seat numbers. Sasha stood patiently, breathing slowly, letting the noise pass around her. She believed patience revealed more strength than anger, a lesson she carried from her upbringing. An airport staff member noticed her waiting longer than expected. He glanced at her bag, then at her clothes, and his expression changed. Without a greeting, he told her to move aside. His voice was sharp, as if she had already done something wrong. Sasha nodded politely and followed his instruction without resistance. She assumed it was a routine check and nothing more. She stood near a barrier and waited, watching others move forward. Minutes passed, then more minutes followed, and no one returned to explain. Her calm slowly met confusion, but she kept her posture steady and her voice quiet. Another staff member joined the first, whispering something that made them both frown. They looked at Sasha again, this time with suspicion instead of curiosity. One of them asked her questions quickly, not allowing her time to answer fully. Sasha spoke clearly and respectfully, offering her documents and explaining her travel plans. The staff did not seem interested in her answers. Their eyes moved past her words, already forming conclusions. One of them said her documents needed further review, though he did not explain why. A small crowd began to notice, and quiet whispers spread through the line. Sasha felt the familiar weight of being judged without reason. She had faced this kind of moment before, though never easily. She reminded herself to stay composed, knowing that reactions often became excuses. She asked calmly if a supervisor could assist, hoping for fairness and clarity. The request was ignored. Instead, a staff member pointed toward the exit and said she could not remain inside the terminal. His words were firm and final, leaving no room for discussion. Sasha felt a deep sense of disbelief, not because she was afraid, but because she expected better from a place built on rules and order. She tried once more to explain, choosing her words carefully. Her voice remained steady, even as her heart felt heavy. The staff member shook his head and repeated the instruction, louder this time. Nearby travelers stopped pretending not to watch. Two staff members began escorting her toward the doors. Sasha walked with dignity, refusing to let embarrassment control her steps. She felt eyes on her back, some filled with curiosity, others with discomfort. No one spoke up, and the silence felt louder than any argument. As the automatic doors opened, cool air brushed against her face. She stepped outside the terminal and stopped just beyond the entrance. The doors closed behind her with a soft sound that felt heavier than it should have. She stood still for a moment, gathering herself. Sasha looked at the building in front of her and took a slow breath. She did not cry, though the urge pressed against her chest. She had learned to carry pain quietly, without letting it break her. What hurt most was not being asked to leave, but not being heard. Inside the terminal, the staff returned to their duties, believing the situation was over. They spoke briefly among themselves, convinced they had handled everything correctly. None of them questioned their decision, and none of them checked the name on her documents again. Sasha sent a short message from her phone, choosing her words carefully. She did not complain or exaggerate what had happened. She simply explained where she was and what had occurred. After sending it, she placed the phone back into her bag and waited. She stood there alone, watching taxis arrive and depart. People hurried past her without knowing who she was or what she carried within her. To them, She was just another traveler delayed by rules and misunderstandings. To herself, she was someone who refused to let moments like this define her. What the airport staff did not realize was that this quiet moment outside the terminal was only the beginning. Their decision, made quickly and without care, was about to return with consequences far beyond their imagination. Very soon, the doors they watched so casually would open again. And when they did, a man known across the world would walk through them with calm authority. His presence would shift the air itself, and every eye would turn. Only then would the staff understand the weight of the mistake they had made. Inside the airport, time moved forward as if nothing unusual had happened. Staff members returned to their counters, helping passengers and answering questions with tired voices. The moment with Sasha faded from their minds, replaced by boarding calls and security alerts. They believed the situation was closed and no longer worth thinking about. Outside the terminal, Sasha waited quietly near a bench. She sat down slowly and placed her bag beside her feet. Her face remained calm, but her thoughts were heavy. She replayed the moment in her mind, not with anger, but with a deep sense of sadness. She had hoped the world had changed more than this. She believed respect should come before judgment, no matter who someone was. Sitting there, she reminded herself that her worth did not depend on how strangers treated her. Still, the silence around her felt lonely. A black car pulled into the airport drop-off lane and stopped near the entrance. The driver stepped out quickly and opened the back door. A tall man stepped onto the pavement with steady confidence. His presence was calm but powerful, the kind that drew attention without effort. People nearby recognized him instantly and slowed their steps. Some whispered, others stared in disbelief. Phones were lowered instead of raised, as if instinct told them this was not a moment for noise. He looked around, scanning the area until his eyes found Sasha. Sasha stood up as soon as she saw him. Relief crossed her face, though she tried to hide it. She walked toward him, and he opened his arms without hesitation. The hug was quiet and strong, filled with understanding rather than words. He listened as she explained what had happened. She spoke simply and honestly, leaving out emotion and focus only on facts. He nodded slowly, his expression serious but controlled. When she finished, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Together, they turned toward the terminal doors. Every step he took seemed to slow the world around him. People moved aside naturally, creating a clear path without being asked. The automatic doors opened again, welcoming him back inside. Inside the terminal, the atmosphere changed instantly. Conversations softened, and staff members straightened their posture. A supervisor noticed him and froze in place, eyes wide with recognition. Within seconds, whispers rushed through the staff area like wind. The same staff members who had escorted Sasha out earlier noticed him walking beside her. Their faces drained of color as realization struck. One of them looked down at the floor, another stared at the screen in front of him without blinking. Fear replaced confidence. The supervisor stepped forward quickly, forcing a polite smile. He greeted the man respectfully and asked how he could help. The man responded calmly, his voice steady and clear. He asked one simple question about why his daughter had been removed from the terminal. The supervisor hesitated before answering. He glanced at the staff members involved, then back again. His words came out unsure and rushed. He spoke about procedures and misunderstandings, avoiding direct responsibility. The man listened without interruption. His face showed no anger, but his silence carried weight. When the supervisor finished, the man asked for the incident report. He asked for names and for a clear explanation. His tone remained calm, making it impossible to argue. The staff members involved stepped forward one by one. Their voices trembled as they spoke. They repeated their earlier claims, now sounding uncertain even to themselves. Each sentence revealed how quickly they had judged without verification. Passengers nearby stopped pretending not to listen. The terminal grew quiet as attention focused on the scene. The contrast between calm authority and nervous excuses was clear to everyone watching. No one doubted where the truth stood. Sasha remained silent beside him. She did not need to speak again. Her presence alone told the story better than words. She watched the staff carefully, not with anger, but with quiet observation. The supervisor finally admitted mistakes were made. He apologized directly to Sasha, lowering his head slightly. His voice carried regret, though it came too late to erase the moment. He promised immediate action and review. The man accepted the apology but did not soften his expression. He spoke about dignity and fairness in a voice that carried across the terminal. He reminded them that rules existed to protect people, not to harm them. His words were firm but respectful. Staff members nodded quickly, absorbing every word. They understood this was not about status or power. It was about behavior and accountability. The lesson reached further than the people standing there. The supervisor arranged for proper check-in immediately. Sasha was offered assistance and respect that should have come from the start. She thanked them politely, though the moment felt heavy. She wished no one else would face what she had. As they moved toward the counter, the terminal slowly returned to life. Conversations resumed, though quieter than before. People walked away carrying a story they would never forget. The airport would remember this day long after flights departed. For the staff involved, the moment stayed carved into memory. They had learned how fast judgment could turn into regret. They had seen the cost of treating someone unfairly. The lesson would follow them long after their shift ended. And for Sasha, this was another reminder of the strength she carried. She stood taller, not because of who her father was, but because she knew her own value. What happened next would reach far beyond this airport. The airport slowly returned to its usual rhythm, but something unseen had shifted beneath the surface. People moved again, flights were announced, and luggage rolled across the floor. Yet the tension from earlier still lingered like a quiet echo. Those who witnessed the moment could not forget it easily. Sasha stood at the counter as her documents were checked again. This time, every movement was careful and respectful. The staff spoke gently, choosing words with caution. What once felt cold now felt overly polite. She accepted the help without changing her expression. Inside, she felt a mix of emotions that were difficult to name. Relief was there, but so was disappointment. Being treated fairly should never require recognition or power. Her father stood a few steps behind her, watching quietly. He did not interfere or speak unless necessary. He believed lessons lasted longer when people reflected on their actions themselves. His presence alone was enough. The supervisor stayed close, making sure every detail was handled correctly. He kept apologizing in small ways, hoping to repair what had been broken. Each apology sounded sincere, yet the weight of the mistake remained. Some things could not be undone. Nearby staff whispered among themselves. They spoke about rules and training and pressure. Some admitted they had judged too fast. Others realized how easily habits replaced humanity. Passengers who had watched earlier shared looks with one another. A few nodded toward Sasha with quiet support. No words were needed to express understanding. Sometimes silence carried more meaning than applause. Sasha finished checking in and stepped away from the counter. She held her boarding pass and looked around the terminal. Everything looked the same as before, yet felt different. The place that pushed her out now welcomed her back. They walked together toward the seating area. Her father asked gently how she was feeling. She smiled faintly and said she was fine. He knew that fine often meant strong enough to move forward. They sat down side by side, waiting for boarding to begin. Around them, people pretended not to stare, though curiosity lingered. Sasha focused on her breathing, grounding herself in the moment. She refused to let the experience steal her peace. Time passed slowly. Each minute allowed thoughts to settle. She remembered moments from her life when she had faced judgment before words were spoken. She had learned to respond with calm instead of anger. Her father watched her quietly, proud but thoughtful. He knew she carried burdens most people never saw. He admired her strength, knowing it came from within. Titles and names did not define her character. Across the terminal, the staff involved were pulled aside by management. Conversations were serious and quiet. Instructions were given, and notes were taken. Consequences began to take shape. The staff member who had first spoken sharply replayed the moment in his mind. He realized how quickly he had assumed the worst. He felt shame settle heavily in his chest. He wished he had simply listened. Another staff member stared at the floor as management spoke. She thought about how easily she followed instead of questioned. She understood that silence could also cause harm. That realization stayed with her. The supervisor addressed the team firmly. He spoke about respect, fairness, and responsibility. He reminded them that every passenger deserved dignity. His words were clear and left no space for excuses. Back at the seating area, Sasha noticed a young woman nearby watching her. The woman gave a small, encouraging smile. Sasha returned it gently. That small exchange meant more than the apologies. Boarding was announced for an earlier flight. People stood and moved toward the gate. Life continued around them, unaware of the personal impact left behind. The world never paused for reflection unless forced. Sasha leaned back in her seat and closed her eyes briefly. She allowed herself to feel tired. Strength did not mean ignoring pain. It meant carrying it without letting it harden the heart. Her father spoke softly about how moments like this revealed more than comfort ever could. He reminded her that change came from awareness. She listened, knowing he spoke from experience. His calm voice grounded her. She nodded and looked ahead. She knew her story would not end at this airport. Others would hear about what happened, not because of anger, but because of truth. Awareness would travel further than blame. The boarding announcement for her flight finally echoed through the terminal. She stood and adjusted her bag. She felt ready to move forward. What happened would stay with her, but it would not define her journey. They walked together toward the gate. Staff stepped aside respectfully as they passed. Some looked apologetic, others thoughtful. Each carried their own reflection. As she reached the gate entrance, Sasha paused for a brief moment. She looked back at the terminal, taking in the space that challenged her dignity. She chose to release the weight she carried there. She turned forward and stepped ahead. Strength followed her, quiet and steady. The lesson left behind would continue working long after her departure. The final impact of this day had yet to fully unfold. The boarding line moved slowly, giving Sasha time to reflect as she waited her turn. The sounds of the airport faded into the background as her thoughts grew clearer. She felt tired but grounded, aware that this day had changed something inside her. Not broken, but sharpened. She handed her boarding pass to the agent, who smiled politely and wished her a safe flight. The words were simple, yet they carried a meaning that felt earned. Sasha nodded in thanks and stepped onto the jet bridge. Each step forward felt like leaving a weight behind. Her father stopped near the gate entrance, watching her with quiet pride. He did not follow her further, knowing this part of the journey was hers alone. Their eyes met for a moment, sharing understanding without speech. Then she continued forward. Inside the aircraft, the cabin lights glowed softly. Passengers settled into their seats, unaware of the story that had unfolded before boarding. Sasha found her seat by the window and placed her bag beneath it. She sat down and exhaled slowly. As the plane prepared for departure, she looked out at the runway. The airport stretched wide and busy, filled with people carrying their own unseen struggles. She wondered how many others had faced moments like hers without support or recognition. That thought stayed with her. Back in the terminal, life continued at its usual pace. Flights departed and arrived, announcements echoed, and schedules ruled the day. Yet for the staff who had been involved, nothing felt quite the same. The memory followed them quietly. The supervisor gathered his team once more after the rush slowed. He spoke with seriousness and care. He reminded them that their actions shaped experiences they might never fully see. His message was clear and lasting. Training sessions were scheduled, procedures reviewed, and accountability enforced. It was not done for appearance, but for change. Some staff felt uneasy, others grateful for the clarity. Growth often came with discomfort. The staff member who had first judged Sasha made a silent promise to himself. He decided he would listen before assuming and question before reacting. He knew trust was built one choice at a time. That realization stayed close. Another staff member shared the story with a colleague later that evening. Not to excuse herself, but to warn. She spoke about how easily authority could blind kindness. The story spread quietly, shaping awareness. Outside the airport, the city moved on under fading daylight. Cars filled the roads and lights began to glow in windows. The world remained busy, unaware of the quiet lessons being learned within its systems. Change rarely announced itself loudly. High above, Sasha's plane lifted into the sky. She watched the city shrink beneath clouds, feeling both small and strong at once. She rested her head back and closed her eyes. Peace slowly replaced tension. She thought about dignity and how fragile it could feel in careless hands. She also thought about resilience and how powerful it became when protected. The balance between the two defined her journey. She chose to carry both forward. When the seat belt sign turned off, she opened her eyes again. A calm sense of purpose settled within her. She knew her life would continue with challenges, but also with clarity. This moment would guide her quietly. Elsewhere, news of the incident reached higher levels of airport management. Discussions followed, policies were examined, and expectations were reinforced. The focus stayed on fairness rather than blame. Progress required intention. For the passengers who had witnessed the event, the memory lingered. Some shared it with friends, others kept it private. Each carried away a reminder that respect should never be selective. The story traveled further than the terminal walls. Sasha landed hours later in a different city. She stepped off the plane with steady confidence. New air filled her lungs, carrying possibility rather than tension. She felt ready to move forward. As she walked through another terminal, she noticed small details more clearly. A kind smile from a stranger, a helpful gesture from staff, a moment of patience in a long line. These moments mattered more than headlines. She knew her name might open doors, but her character would decide how she walked through them. That truth guided her steps. She chose grace not because it was easy, but because it was powerful. Back at the original airport, a plaque was quietly added near the staff area weeks later. It carried a simple message about dignity and fairness. Few passengers noticed it, but staff saw it daily. The reminder stood firm. The incident became part of training discussions, not as a scandal, but as a lesson. New staff heard the story and understood its meaning. Respect was no longer just a word in a manual. It was an expectation. Sasha continued her life with the same quiet strength she always carried. She did not seek attention or apology beyond what was given. Her focus stayed on growth and purpose. She understood that real impact often moved silently. The airport remained just a place on her journey, not its destination. Yet what happened there left an imprint that mattered. Change had begun not through anger, but through presence and truth. That was enough. And so the story did not end with regret alone. It ended with awareness, responsibility, and quiet resolve. A moment of judgment became a turning point. From that day forward, many chose to see before assuming. The flight continued toward its destination as the world turned below. Sasha looked ahead with calm certainty. She carried her lesson forward, knowing dignity once defended could light the way for others.